He thought he'd found peace in his own home, quiet streets, friendly neighbors, and the simple comfort of charging his brand new EV at night. But what he didn't know was that his success, his very presence, would spark resentment he never asked for. One neighbor, fueled by entitlement and prejudice, decided his charger wasn't his alone, but public property. What followed wasn't just a battle over electricity. It was a test of dignity, justice, and survival in a place he thought was safe. The question is, how far would she go to take what wasn't hers? Marcus had worked hard for everything he owned. After years of long shifts and sacrifice, he finally moved into a quiet suburban neighborhood, a place he believed would offer safety, stability, and maybe even a sense of belonging. His new electric vehicle was more than just a car. It was a symbol of progress, a reminder that his hard work had finally paid off. Each evening, he pulled into his driveway, plugged in the charger, and felt a quiet satisfaction knowing he'd built this life himself. For a while, everything seemed normal. The streets were calm, lined with manicured lawns and trimmed hedges. Neighbors waved politely, though not always warmly. Marcus didn't mind. He kept to himself, focused on his career, his home, and his family's future. But behind those drawn curtains, not everyone saw him the same way. To some, he was the outsider who didn't quite fit the unspoken mold of the neighborhood. And to one woman in particular, the sight of his car charging in his own driveway became an obsession. She told herself it wasn't about race, that it was about rules, fairness, or property. But beneath the surface, her resentment ran deeper. Marcus had no idea yet. To him, this was just home, a safe space. What he didn't realize was that the very thing that symbolized his success, the charger on his wall, would soon make him the target of a storm he never saw coming. At first, Marcus didn't notice anything unusual. The charger hummed quietly each night, drawing no attention except the faint glow of its indicator light. But soon, he began to notice small, unsettling signs that something wasn't right. Notes tucked under his windshield wipers. Messages written in sharp, curt handwriting. "This isn't your personal gas station. Neighborhood property belongs to all of us." The words didn't make sense. Not for something he owned, installed, and paid for himself. He brushed it off, convincing himself it was a misunderstanding, maybe even a prank. But the notes didn't stop. They multiplied. Each one carried more venom than the last. And each time, Marcus felt the walls of his so-called safe neighborhood closing in. Then came the stares. Whenever he walked outside, he could feel eyes tracking him from behind curtains and blinds. One morning, he caught a glimpse of a woman across the street, her arms crossed tightly as she glared at his driveway. She never waved, never smiled, just watched. Marcus didn't know her name yet, but in time, the neighborhood would come to know her for exactly what she was. A Karen in every sense of the word. The tension escalated when Marcus found the charger cable deliberately unplugged. At first, he thought it might have been an accident. But then it happened again, and again. Sometimes the plug was dropped carelessly on the ground, scratched and dirted, as if someone wanted him to know they had been there. Marcus started to feel unsettled in his own home. Nights grew longer, heavier, with every creak of the porch or rustle of leaves making him wonder if someone was out there, waiting. Still, he told himself to stay calm, to keep his composure. After all, what could he do without proof? But then came the moment that changed everything. He stepped outside one evening to find the woman, Karen, standing at the edge of his driveway. No note this time, no pretense. Just her, bold and unflinching, pointing at his charger like it belonged to her. Her voice carried across the quiet street, sharp and accusing. She claimed it was community property, insisting he had no right to keep it for himself. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. He tried to reason, to explain, but her words grew louder, harsher. She accused him of hogging resources, of breaking rules, of not belonging. Each word dripped with the kind of venom he recognized all too well. It wasn't about electricity. It wasn't about rules. It was about him. The confrontation ended with Karen storming off, muttering that she'd handle it her way. And that's when Marcus realized this wasn't going to stop. Not with logic. Not with patience. He knew she'd be back. And so he began to plan. Because if Karen wanted to play a game, Marcus was ready to set a trap. Marcus had prepared for this moment. He installed a discreet security camera aimed directly at the charger. A silent witness that would capture everything. For days he waited, watching the footage each night, hoping the harassment would stop. But Karen was relentless. And finally, one night the trap was sprung. At 2 a.m., headlights swept across his driveway. A figure stepped into view, crouching near the charger. The camera caught her clearly. Karen, tugging at the cord, yanking it loose, muttering under her breath. She wasn't just unplugging it this time. She was trying to damage it, pulling with enough force to snap the cable. Marcus watched from the window, his heart pounding. This wasn't just sabotage, it was hatred on full display. He wanted to rush outside, to confront her, but he knew better. Confrontation could spiral into something far worse. And in a neighborhood already whispering about him, the odds weren't in his favor. So he let her finish. He let her storm off, convinced she'd won. And in that silence, Marcus felt both fury and resolve boiling inside him. The next morning, the footage spread online. First to the HOA, then to the community, and finally to strangers across the internet who had no patience for excuses. Karen wasn't just caught. She was exposed. Her entitlement, her prejudice, her obsession with tearing down a man who simply wanted to live in peace. It was all on display for the world to see. But for Marcus, it wasn't just about vindication. It was about something bigger. Because as the views climbed, so did the comments. People saw the truth. That his crime was never about a charger. It was about being a black man who dared to thrive where some thought he didn't belong. And in that moment, as the world finally saw her for who she really was, Marcus realized. Sometimes the best revenge isn't confrontation. It's exposure. In the days that followed, Karen tried to defend herself. She claimed it was a misunderstanding, that she only wanted fairness, that the footage didn't tell the full story. But no one bought it. The HOA issued warnings. Neighbors who once stayed silent began to distance themselves from her. And her name became a byword for entitlement exposed. For Marcus, the charger worked again. The notes stopped. The stares faded. On the surface, it looked like a victory. A man standing his ground, using truth and patience to outsmart hatred. But inside, the scars were harder to erase. Every glance over his shoulder, every whisper he caught in passing, reminded him that safety in America isn't always guaranteed. Even in your own driveway. The charger had never really been the issue. It was just the spark that lit the fire of something much older, much uglier. A belief that his success, his presence, his very existence in that neighborhood was up for debate. That he needed to be put in his place. Yet, by turning the lens back on her, Marcus did more than protect his own dignity. He reminded the world that racism thrives in the everyday, in HOAs, in driveways, in whispered judgments behind curtains, and that sometimes the smallest acts of exposure can ripple into something bigger. Because this wasn't just one man's story. It was proof that progress doesn't come from silence, but from shining a light on injustice, no matter how ordinary it pretends to be. So the question remains, how many more Karens will it take before entitlement ends? And when it happens again, who will have the courage to press record?